Okay, in today's video, we're going to do a more in-depth and close-up look at the Anderson Spectrum. This is a 4x8 model. We have this on our floor in Northern California. This is available, powered up, connected to air and dust, and ready for demo. But I just wanted to give you some highlights. Some consider this the Anderson entry-level or economy machine, but even though it is one of our smaller machines, it weighs in at over 6,000 pounds and does come fully loaded. You'll notice first we'll look over here. It's got the dual 2-Becker duplex system. So every machine is standard with these 2 pumps, and we only go up from there. It's also got the 12 horsepower Anderson spindle, a 6x1 drill bank, a 6-position automatic tool changer, and that's going to be hiding in the back on the Spectrum model. We do have a new cover for that for the 2023 model. It also has 3 pop-up pins, so that's going to be for quick and easy material location. It does have the helical rack and pinion. We're going to take a look at the interface a little later. I've got the machine off currently, so we're not bleeding any air and that air compressor isn't cycling, so you can hear some of the description. It does come with a set of safety barriers. Again, this is all standard and fully loaded from the factory. This machine also has the same standard FANUC servo control system that our larger machines have. So we're not cutting any corners. We're not putting in a less expensive operating system. It's got the FANUC controller. It's also got the full front end PC and pedestal. Again, this is all standard. And it's all these little things that Anderson does that I'm going to be pointing out throughout this video that I just love. Like, for example, definitely don't need to include this, but this is a Wi-Fi adapter, USB Wi-Fi adapter, which means right out of the box, as soon as you get your machine, you can instantly plug that into your network. So that's going to give you a couple different options. One, I can set up a Dropbox or any other networking system, and I can be working remotely. I can be working in the office and have all my files automatically sent and ready to run on the Anderson. It's also going to give me internet access, so that means I can get remote support or diagnostics if I need it. A couple other things that you'll notice is grease points. So they made the grease points a little easier. You don't have to try to get underneath here where the actual bearing car is. You just have your grease points that are clearly labeled on the outside here. And then also a distribution system. So you can see a bank of grease ports here and another bank right here. So that gives you much easier access than trying to get back into every little Zerk fitting with a grease gun, which is kind of what we did in years past. Now we've got the distribution systems that are set up, makes setting all that up a lot easier. Also, once we get this interface turned on, I'll show you how we can set up timers and reminders inside the system. So basically everything from vacuum pump filter changes to lubricating the machine, all those are set up on reminders that'll pop up on our screen at the appropriate interval. Very, very neat stuff. Let me go ahead and show you inside that back panel here, and this is where the electronics are, our controller of the machine. Everything's really nicely laid out and labeled. That's what Anderson does, is a really good job of labeling every wire, and they give you more documentation than any other manufacturer that I've ever seen. But power is going to go on the Spectrum, is going to go right here in the lower left where you see L1, L2, and L3. That's where incoming power is going to go. And the really neat thing is that you can put 208, 240, or 480 volt to that spot in the machine. It will take any of those voltages, because over here we have a little mini tap transformer. So if you see right here, here's the 3 voltages, 208, 240, and 480. So you will be able to utilize this machine with either of those 3 voltages, and then the transformer just takes care of that for you. So very, very neat. Another thing we've carried over from our larger machines, you just don't see these on most entry-level models, is a efficient dust collection system. So we've got 2 blast gates on here. So one is going to be for your main spindle and one for your drill bank. When your machine is not running, both blast gates will be closed. So you can run other tools like an edge bander, and you're not going to be losing CFM to your router. When the drill bank turns off, that blast gate closes. When your spindle turns off, that blast gate closes automatically, so you really don't have to worry about it. That's another neat feature this machine has. And then if I come down here and we look at the incoming air line, They provide you a on-off valve right here from the factory. So I really love that. So if I'm not using the machine again, I'm gonna close that off, because any good machine will have positive airflow coming out of the bottom of the spindle continuously, just a little bit. And that prevents unwanted particles, and when the machine's cooling off, it prevents moisture from being attracted inside the spindle. So that's great to have that automatically coming out of the cone of the spindle, but when we're not running the machine, we can close this and prevent that unnecessary leak. Also right here, there's another valve right here. You can see that one. That is something kind of unique to the Spectrum. We have an adjustable airflow nozzle, and it's going to be hidden right here next to the drivetrain. And it's hard to see in here, but it's right here. And what that will do is that'll actually spray this helical rack as the machine's running, and you can adjust how much you actually want on there. And that prevents dust and debris buildup from happening on the face of this rack. So again, one little extra step that they're doing to help prevent problems and issues in the future by keeping that rack nice and clean. And I believe there is an air blast on each side. I can see one right there. If we look through that crack, and then if I come over here, I'll see if it's on this side as well. It is. So it's before and after the large helical pinion gear. On both sides of the motor, you're going to have a air nozzle that is blasting on that rack continuously. And that's going to be on both sides of the gantry, on the left and the right. Okay, I want to pause just for a minute and talk a little bit about this tabletop. So on top of our steel bed, on our steel base, we have like an 1.5 inch thick phenolic tabletop grid. And you can see I'm starting to put our gasket material in here. And it has these holes all throughout, and that's where we're gonna get our airflow, is a whole bunch of these holes patterned all throughout this table. But Anderson goes a little bit above and beyond. Not only do they have a great airflow setup, where they have the multiple cross pattern and the channels that air can flow when you don't have gasket, and then on top the air can flow. But if you zoom in here real tight, it's hard to see, but yeah, you can see that. Those are actually all the edges of every single square is chamfered. Now that seems like a minor deal maybe, but if you've ever worked on these machines, crawled around on these machines, gotten on your hands and knees on these machines, I've gotten my knees and hands and elbows scraped up, and even to the point of bleeding on some tables that are just a nice sharp edge, where they just do a basic square and they're done. They've come through and chamfered every single edge. So this is actually, you know, almost smooth to the touch. I'm not gonna cut myself on this table, moving things around, loading, unloading, or even if I have to get onto the table at times. So again, seems like something very simple and subtle, but I just wanted to point that out. It's even down to the design of the vacuum tabletop, they go above and beyond. Now we've got a nice view along the side here with the safety barriers. And another thing to point out is every table gets a vacuum gauge. Again, some companies shave a few bucks and you won't get a vacuum gauge on your table. Anderson's not one of them, so I love that we've got that vacuum gauge there. You can keep track of where your vacuum's at, how your pumps are performing. This machine also has a low vacuum sensor, so it'll actually pause the machine if we don't have a certain amount of vacuum. That'll prevent you from trying to run a program when you've forgotten to turn on the pumps, or you've got a massive leak that you didn't know about. That machine will warn you and pause. It also has a low air pressure sensor, of course. Here's a look at that cover, and we'll see that in action a little bit later. And then the nice large style touch-off block. That's for our automatic tool touch-off. So it's not a 1 inch or a 1.5 inch. This is like a 4-inch disc, just like our larger machines, which gives you plenty of room for those larger tools. We don't have to worry about having to do a tool manually that might not fit on that platform. And the nice thing is it is a recessed tool touch-off, so it's lower than the phenolic. So especially after we put a MDF spoil board on there, we don't have to worry about ever moving around material and having that get smacked. Here's our pop-up pins there, and a look underneath the gantry. Plenty of clearance. I'd look that up, but that's, I think, 6 or 7 inches of clearance from phenolic to the top of the gantry. We'll go ahead and get this machine powered up, and you can see some of the functionality, how it sounds, how it looks when it's running. And eventually we will mill the spoil board and actually cut something. Okay, before I finish getting this thing ready to fire up, I do have to put the table gasketing in. So I'm going to be using a 97 by 49 inch MDF spoil board. So I just took a tape measure and put it on my phenolic tabletop, and I measured out 97 inches from the back where my pop-up pins are. That's where I'm going to be referencing from, and that's going to put my gasket grid right here. And then I did the same thing for the width, 49 inches, which comes around right here. So my next closest spot that I can fit this gasket in would be in that slot right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. And then I'm gonna have to spend a little bit of time taking out all these vacuum plugs. So I do like the factory supplies these plugs. One is that you have plenty of plugs now if you ever need to do something custom and you want to concentrate your vacuum in a very small area, you can simply plug up the rest of your table. Also during shipping, transportation, trucking, depending on where this is going, we don't have to worry about any debris, dust, stuff falling inside there, which would eventually get sucked into the vacuum system, or at least into the filter area. So we don't have to worry about that because this is going to be plugged from the factory until it gets to your shop, and then you can simply remove those. So it'll take a few minutes to remove those, and we'll get all those out of there. We don't need any of these plugs because we're going to have a full 4x8 sheet covering the majority of this tabletop, and then we'll be ready to set up our spoil board program. Okay, coming back here, on the Anderson Spectrum, we do have a built-in tightening stand at the rear of the machine. This comes with the machine, it's ready to go, and it's got this nice little spanner wrench here that matches the tool holders. Now, you could use a standard wrench and do this on the table or on a workbench, that's fine. I like the tightening stand, makes it a little bit easier, a little bit more controlled than trying to work with two big wrenches on a flat table. So what happens is we're going to take this, and if you look closely, you can see it's got flats on each side. On the edges here, we're going to match those flats and put those right in here to this little tightening stand. What that does is that locks it in place. You can't spin that. So now I've got hand tight. I can take my wrench and I can just finish the job now. Break too hard, nice and snug, and then we put that back there. Now, I don't have to worry about this. This machine is so heavy, almost 6,000 pounds for a 4x8. If you look in the industry, it's huge. So a lot of weight, a lot of steel. This thing's not moving around. It's very rigid, very solid, very little vibration in this machine. So I can leave this and run the machine all day. I'm not going to worry about this wrench falling on the ground, bouncing around. So I just like to leave it right here so I know where it is next time I need to use it. The only step left for this tool is dropping it physically into one of our tool change positions. And then of course using the automatic touch off to go ahead and measure that tool. So I'm looking around, we have position 2 available. So I'm going to drop this in position 2 and we'll go ahead and touch the tool off. There is a little button that says automatic tool change door. Simply hit that button and it opens this up. And then I'm going to make sure that I put that right on that groove, locks it in place. There's no wiggling, and that tool is ready to go. Okay, we're ready to touch off our new tools. Simply go to our touch off screen, click the tools we want to touch off, and then click on measure, and the procedure will start. So if the spindle is empty, it's going to go down to the tool change position, pick up the correct tool, and then move over and above the tool touch off position. Okay, the Z-axis is centered over that touch-off block. It's automatically lowering. It's going to hit that sensor twice. Then it's going to record that tool length in memory. We don't have to do that again until we change tools. And since we clicked on 2 tools, it's grabbing that second tool now and will return to the touch-off block area. Okay, now we have the 2.5-inch fly cutter that is touching off on our auto touch off device. One last time, a little bit closer look at how that automatic tool touch-off procedure works. With the tooling in place and the program ready to go, that 2.5-inch fly cutter makes quick work of this 4x8 table. So here in this video, we're going to show you how a tool change works from inside the machine. Right now we just called up for a spindle warm-up. So it's going to grab the tool number 1, move to the middle, shroud goes down, spindle turns on, and now we're warming up. Okay, in this video we're looking at a clip of the first test file we ran. We needed to create a small puck out of HDU, and it didn't have the right thickness of material, so we went ahead and used this 3/8 bit. We milled down to the specified thickness I needed out of this sheet of HDU, and then we did a simple cut to create the part we needed, and everything turned out perfect. You can see here the whole program took probably less than 30 seconds to mill that small part to the thickness we needed and then do a simple cutout. Now we're cutting it out. Because it's a small part, I'm doing it in 2 passes with a 30 thousandths onion skin. And now that part is complete. Okay, we just pulled the puck out of the pocket that it was cut. Okay, we are putting a new tool in. So we've got our collet, snap that in nice and flat, and then we're going to thread this onto here. And do it nice and easy. Super smooth. And then we're going to put our tool in here. Now this is our 3/8 compression bit. This is a high performance bit, ultra hard carbide. It's got a special helical geometry for high speed cutting and extended tool life, and it also has a special coating on the tool that extends the tool life. So what our customers are telling us in their studies and tests is that they're getting sometimes 2 to 3 times the life out of this tool. And it's not very expensive, so check with us for recent pricing. And love to ship you out a couple of these to try, and if you like them we can do bulk pricing. I have some customers now ordering these 50 at a time just because they love how long they last, and they're just, again, a nice high performance 3/8 carbide. It has the 0.2 upcut, so you can even use these for pocketing and dados. So check it out. I'll have an email in the description below. You can hit us up and say, hey, I want to try a couple of those bits. I'll give you a good deal on the first couple. And again, we can do bulk pricing on big orders, and we're very, very competitive with pricing on this particular tool. Again, this is our premier 3/8 high performance compression router bit. Okay, here is a view of the first full sheet we ran on this machine. We needed to do some parts to demonstrate our edge banders. So we're cutting out 21 parts out of 3/4 inch melamine. They're 12 by 15 inches. They're about 12 seconds per part, so about 4 minutes or just over 4 minutes per sheet to run this kind of production. We're running at 650 inches a minute at 15,000 RPM. So I get this question all the time, where do I start on finding out feed, speeds, RPM, all that kind of stuff? We do have some charts and some guidelines that we can hand over to you, but you really got to get familiar with the chip load formula. So if you have a chip load chart, it tells you that particle board, for example, should have a chip load of around 0.020. Then you can plug that into your formula, use a calculator. In fact, our Anderson machines have chip load calculators built into the interface you can pull right up on screen. You use that, you can find exactly the sweet spot where you want to be so you can get a good chip load, and then adjust your feed rate and RPM accordingly to get a really, really nice finish, and keeping that tool nice and cool. That tool heats up, gets red hot, it's going to wear out in no time at all. So we've got to keep the heat away from the tool. The best way to do that is to have the right chip load for that material. Okay, now looking over here, we can see the interface while we're running. You could have this on your work list that just shows the programs and the order of programs you have to run. Or I prefer this run screen where we can actually see the G-code cycling through. And up here in the top right corner, some really important information like spindle speed. Right now we're at 100% of what was programmed, which in this case is 15,000 RPM. We're also at 100% of our feed rate that was programmed. In this case, that's 650 inches a minute. On the machine, of course, we do have dials that we can adjust on the fly our feed rate and spindle rate. Down here we can get a little bit of a look at our operator's panel. I love how everything's nice and labeled. You can see the 2 vacuum pumps are on and our vacuum clamp is on, which means we've got vacuum going to the table. And here we can see we're finishing up the last row of parts here for this 4x8 sheet of 3/4 inch metal beam. Okay, never attempt this when the spindle is on, but I turned the machine off immediately after that program ended. And then just touch your tool and hold your finger. It should not be too hot to touch. You should not burn your finger from the heat of that tool. Heat is the #1 enemy of tools. It'll cause premature dulling, and you'll get a lot less life out of your bit if your tool is running hot. So it should never be hot to the touch. In fact, this one was almost cold. So that's perfect, and that's a result of having the proper chip load, RPM, and feed speed that are in harmony to give you a good edge quality, a good, fast, clean cut, and give a nice big chip to remove as much heat as possible away from this tool. So again, once you've cut a full sheet like this is about a 5-minute job. You want to touch and the tool should be cool, maybe slightly body temperature or warm, but never hot. And if that tool is hot, it's just going to burn up really quick and you're going to be changing tools out too often. And the biggest problem we see is people actually running too slow. Again, it's about your chip load. And if you run a real slow feed speed, then you're going to be chopping up the sawdust really fine, and that's going to keep a lot of the heat right here by the tool. With bigger chip loads, on melamine you want to be about 20 to 23 thousandths of an inch. You can get a chip load calculator and you can figure out exactly where your RPM and feed speed need to be. We're right at the sweet spot with 650 inches a minute on this tool, and I believe 15,000 RPM is where we dialed this one in today. And we are really happy with that. Okay, as we're wrapping up this video, I wanted to touch on 3 things. They happen to be probably 3 of my top favorite things about this machine. And we're gonna get into the first one real quick, and that's the gantry. This is a monolithic gantry. What that means, it's a single piece. So in some machines, especially lower budget machines, you're gonna have an upright here. If you're lucky, it's gonna be steel, but then it's gonna be bolted to the beam, the gantry that runs across, that's our bridge. And then the other upright on the other side would also be bolted together. Now this machine is a single piece, like I said, monolithic. So if you look under here, this is a single piece. This is not bolted together. What that means is there's no possibility of the bolts to get loose or the gantry to get out of alignment with the uprights, since it's all a single piece. A lot of times in inferior machines, that is the weakest point, is this gantry, and you'll spend a lot of time fixing that, taking out the bind, taking out the twist, making sure the gantry is straight, you know, and parallel to the machine so that your parts are accurate and that you don't have any diagonals or any inaccuracies, cutting parts out of square, things like that. Not gonna be an issue with the gantry on a monolithic setup like this. Second thing is over here on the console, and we talked about this earlier, said we would mention it, the custom buttons. That's one of my favorite things in this machine. So we can set this whole screen up. I think you get 15 total. Right now I've got about 9 in here. And I'll set those up during install for my customers, and we'll add any extra ones they want in here. These can be anything from your daily routines to a particular part or program that you run all the time. Anything you want can be right in here. And if I'm going to go back to DNC mode, we'll click on utility, and that's your custom buttons. So for example, I've got fly cut in here. So if I click on this button, it'll go grab my fly cutting tool, go out here and start fly cutting the table at 0.015 depth. So I've just got that stored right on the screen there, so I can hit that anytime I want. I've also got home to Z, just brings the Z up. We have park right. So if I want to park right, let's go ahead and hit that one now. This moves the machine all the way to the far right. Now I'm gonna have that programmed in most of my programs. If I'm running a cabinet design program or something from En route, I'm gonna have a park position in the G-code, but it's just nice to get that out of the way so you can unload or load if you happen to be somewhere else other than your park position. Spindle warm-up, it'll go grab a tool, start doing a warm-up routine. Same with the drill warm-up. I'll give you a shot of what that looks like from a little closer up.
Most will probably tell you this drill bank warm-up procedure is not necessary, and that might be true, but I like to do it. It's a quick and easy thing. It just takes a few seconds. It cycles through all the drills, moves them up and down, and then turns on the motor for just a few seconds. And I like to do that every morning when I first turn the machine on before we start running any product.
And as you can see, the dust gate is open because our drill head is now on. And then it closed automatically when the drill turned off and the drill head moved up into position. Okay, one of the last things we're going to look at, my last favorite thing, is click on settings here, maintenance reminders. Again, seems like a really simple thing, except a lot of people ask me, what goes wrong with these machines? What parts break? What's the most problematic thing? And a lot of times, believe it or not, it's lack of maintenance, dust and debris, dust collector not working, not having a sufficient dust collector, or having big gaping holes in the hoses coming to your dust collector, which leaves trash and debris all over the machine, or just simply not doing your regular maintenance. That'll go a long way in making this machine last and be reliable for years to come. And so in the past, we've just relied on people looking in the manual or remembering, all the information that was downloaded on a 2 or 3 day installation and training session. We rely on the operators, if the same operators are even still around in the next 6 months or a year. But then we rely on them to remember all this. Well, not anymore. So now we have a maintenance reminder setup built into the interface. And so we can add anything we want. You can add items, delete items, put in the description, have it as a countdown, or we could do a date and time, a certain amount of sheets. We can track tool life, all sorts of stuff we can do. And these are just the basic ones that we've got set up right now. Vacuum pump filter, cooling fan filters, grease the vacuum pumps every 3,000 hours. And then you can ask the machine to either pause the machine, so it'll actually pause in the middle of a job, or just give you the maintenance reminder before or after a job and kind of bug you to remind you to do that. So that's a really neat thing that we've put into the system now. And I love it because then there's really no excuse. Hey, these are going to count down as you start to use your machine, so you can actually keep track and visualize and go, man, I've got 3 hours left until I've got to go in there and do some cleaning. So it's a really nice reminder. I love having it. I'm glad that all my customers get to use this now. And again, you can customize that to meet your specific needs in your specific machine. Okay, that's going to wrap it up for the Spectrum 4x8 from Anderson, America. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, as always, feel free to reach out, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thanks.